Well, good morning, folks. It's a pretty dreary morning, a lot of rain. I appreciate you all facing the weather to make it to class on time, so that's great. Today, you can probably gather by the topics that we have listed, we're going to be talking about the inventory that you all took last time, so we'll talk a little bit about some of that stuff. And we'll talk about the inventory, learning strategies inventory assignment that you all will need to do moving forward. I'm going to try to schedule that to be due sometime next week, so you don't have to worry about it this week. Yeah?
You said our activity can be that meeting we went to, right? The
ACS? Yes, it can be the ACS meeting. I just need you to fill out all the stuff and upload it, and we'll be good there. So a couple of things to remind everybody about before we get started. Semester by semester plans for you all are going to be due September the 17th, which should be this Friday, by 5. So some of you have already uploaded, and that's great. Some of you still have to do that. So don't put that off until the last day. And then, of course, we have activity 1 that's still due. I sent out a email asking you all to schedule your first one-on-one with me. That first meeting needs to be done by October 1st, but I would really like to have all of those scheduled by this Friday. So if you haven't emailed me with some times that would work for you, please do so by Friday, and I'll pick one that fits my schedule. Now, I sent out some blocks of time that I told you worked fairly well for me. That doesn't mean that I can't make other things work. So if nothing seems to overlap, send me some times that work for you. I will even be willing to meet in the evening, since this is by teams, as long as it's before 9 p.m. After 9 p.m. is all my time, okay? So that's how I typically do that kind of stuff. So if nothing seems to work and you're really busy, I understand that. We can make alternative arrangements. But nonetheless, that's going to be 15 minutes for us to get to know each other one-on-one just a little bit, for me to get an idea of what your goals are and what your plans are and all that kind of good stuff, and learn a little bit extra about you, and then move from there. So it does count as one of your, it's part of that entire activity grade, but it's not one of your activities, the 2 activities that you've got to do on campus. Okay. It's just going to be part of that overall grade. Any questions about any of that? Okay. So for today, you'll note that I put in a short video on YouTube. I know it's a little cheesy, but it is one of my favorite videos on growth mindset, so I thought we would spend a few minutes and watch that together.
What is a growth mindset? We can liken the theory of growth and fixed mindset to the story of the tortoise and the hare. To have a fixed mindset means to believe one's basic abilities, intelligence, and talents are just fixed traits. A growth mindset means that you understand that talents and abilities can be developed through effort, practicing, and persistence. People with a fixed mindset often develop a peak before their peers, appearing to be more intelligent and successful than everyone else. However, this is a dangerous trap to fall into. The moment we believe that success is determined by a grain level of ability, we will be brittle in the face of adversity. This is what happens to the hare. The tortoise, however, with a growth mindset, continues to power through and work hard, overtaking the hare eventually and winning the race. Nice one, Terry.
Thanks, the race one.
You're welcome, Terry. How many of us think ourselves as not maths people, or creative, or sociable, or athletic? If we are to fulfill our potentials, we have to start thinking differently. We are not chained or bound to our current abilities. Take this tree, for example. It needs to be fed with lots of minerals and food for it to grow, just like you do. By continuing to nurture and care for this tree, it can grow taller and stronger than other trees. The trunk and branches will literally explode with growth, just like your brain. Your brain is malleable and physically can change size and grow. Even more so at a young age, the activity and growth of the brain during your short teenage years is phenomenal. So how do you do this? Well, there's no shortcut or secret solution. It's as simple as hard work, commitment, and perseverance. In any chosen field or career path, you are certain to have some level of failure at one point. But at each pitfall we come across, you must learn to overcome it. There is a popular movie quote that goes like this: "Why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves back." Batman wasn't born with any superpowers, abilities, or talents, and just as Gotham's Dark Knight understood, he had to train relentlessly to succeed. So must you. Right now, these fixed mindset learners might be ahead of others, but they are afraid of failure. And when they reach the peak that they're comfortable in, they'll just stay there. They will never reach their full potential. Failure is the most essential step to success. And as the growth mindset continues to improve, they will overtake the rest. If you feel like you're in a fixed mindset, don't lose hope, because there is a lot we can do to change that. But start by listening to our fixed mindset voice. And when you hear it, talk back with a growth mindset voice. If you hear, "I can't do it," add "yet." Fixed mindsets can change. So what mindset are you in?
I really like that little video. I'll tell you a little bit of a story about me when I was an undergraduate many years ago now. The point for me where I had to decide, and this was before we talked about growth mindset or fixed mindset, but it was a point for me where I decided that chemistry, was what I wanted to do and move forward. But it was a point where I had a significant challenge. And it was when I was taking Physical Chemistry 1. I was a transfer student. I went to a community college, which did a good job, but we didn't get as far along in our calculus sequence as the calculus sequence happened at the University of Arkansas, where I transferred to. And when I was in PChem 1, I found myself struggling early on with some of the mathematical concepts. And I went by and talked to the professor about it. I was at that point thinking, I just can't do this. And he didn't use the terms growth mindset or fixed mindset, but he did talk to me about the fact that if it's in books, we can all learn it. And he convinced me that all I needed to do was do a little differently than what I was doing, and I could succeed. And in fact, I did. So obviously I became a professor even. So you're going to run into places where you have to make a decision. Are you going to listen to your fixed mindset or your growth mindset about things? And it's going to come down to how bad do you want to do whatever it is that you want to do. Many of you will face that earlier. Some of you will face that later. But nonetheless, everybody's going to face it. There will be a class that you will take at some point, and it may not even be a chemistry class. It may be a math class. It may be your physics class. It may be one of your humanities classes where you have to sit and think, is this worth doing? What I can tell you is that if you know what you want to do and you're committed to it, you need to really listen to your growth mindset. Because every one of you are in this room are intelligent enough to make it through any major that you want to. Okay? I hope it's chemistry or biochemistry. But we want you to succeed in college, and that's what growth mindset's all about, is to getting to your goals. And I'm sure many of you can relate to times when you've said to yourself, well, I'm really not very good at that. And you have to make a decision, right? Do I want to be good at that, or do I want to not be good at that, right? Because we can all practice and be better at just about anything that we want to do. Now, I'm not going to show the video from Carol Dweck, but Carol Dweck is a Stanford professor. I believe she's still active in her field. She wrote a book on growth mindset. But this video here, where she's talking about the power of yet, I think is an important thing. And you heard that at the end of that first video, right, where it said add yet. Right? So when you're in a class and you're working on something and you're struggling through it, don't say I can't do this. Say I'm not able to do this well yet. Right? And that will put you in a different mindset. And I know it sounds simple, but really if you have the right mindset, you will put in the time and effort that it takes to be successful. Now, success doesn't always mean an easy A. Okay? I just want you all to know that. Success quite frequently takes a lot of hard work and time and commitment. That's why when we're having you put together your personalized semester by semester guide, I'm asking you to talk about your time management. Right? If you're in 15 hours or 12 to 15 hours, that's full time. It's full time for a reason, right? Because for every hour of classroom time, we expect you to spend about 2 hours outside of class. You do the math on that, that comes out pretty darn close to 40 hours a week if you're in 12 to 15 hours of coursework. That's why it's called full-time and full-time commitment. Okay? But you need to plan for that. Some classes you're going to find, probably like this one, that you don't need to spend every week 2 hours outside of class. Right now you might be thinking, oh, I'm working on the personalized semester by semester guide, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It takes quite a bit of time. But in a couple of weeks, all of that stuff's going to be over, and we're going to be talking about a lot more fun stuff about chemistry. And you won't be spending as much outside time later in the semester. And I've purposefully designed it that way so that when you're starting to get into midterms and other things in the other classes, you don't have to devote as much outside class time to this stuff. So we will be easing up a little bit later on in the semester for you. But I think what she had to say about yet was very, very powerful. And she talks about the studies that she did with very young children, right? Some children didn't want to do the challenges. Some young children really bought into and really loved the challenges. And how you can develop that growth mindset and think about yet, I think is a very powerful thing. And it's a very powerful thing in terms of what we're going to talk about today with our learning strategies inventory. So let me get that opened up here. There we go. All right, so last week when you all took the learning strategies inventory, we really hadn't talked a whole lot about learning strategies in general. I gave you 11 prompts and asked you to mark them whether or not it was true for you or false for you. And I asked you to be honest, not just to give the answer that I might want to hear, right? And I think most of you did that. So the first prompt was, I always preview the material that will be discussed before I go to class. Why is that learning strategy important? Why is it important to preview the material before you come to any class?
It's not brand new.
Pardon?
It's not brand new.
It's not brand new, right? Do you have a, yes?
Or maybe like ask questions and stuff you might know the answer.
Okay, that's right. Anything else? I like to think of this as how we prime the brain for learning. Just like you would prime a wall or a car or whatever for paint, you're preparing the surface to take on that paint, right, for it to adhere. Previewing the material before you go to class prepares your brain to receive that information. Okay? And that's very, very important. If you come into a class cold, you will have heard things. You might even be familiar with things, but you will have learned very little. Okay? But if you just spend 15 minutes before class, at some point, shortly before class, previewing that material. What could previewing include? What are some activities that you might be able to use to preview your material? Your textbook, absolutely. Right? What do we mean by previewing a textbook? You could skim through, right? I mean, it could be just, if you know in general chemistry today, you're going to be talking about chapter 4.1 through 4.6. you could at least go through and know what 4.1 through 4.6 are. Right? Is it something about the periodic table? Are we going to learn about some trends? What are we going to be learning about? We're going to learning about stoichiometry, right? That way, when you go into the classroom, you're ready and prepared to receive that information. Of course, we hope you've read the textbook before you come to class. But even if you've read the textbook a day or so before, you still need to preview before class. That early level previewing seems to really prime the brain quite well for learning. Unfortunately, only 54.2% of the class said that this was true for them. Okay? We need it to be closer to 100%. Don't do that. There we go. 2, I go over my lecture notes as soon as possible after lecture to rework them and note problem areas. Why is this important?
You know where you stand.
Okay? It's kind of an assessment in a way, right? Okay, very good. What else? Why else might this be important?
So you'll know where you need to be working in.
Okay.
The next workshop.
All right. What do we mean by as soon as possible? What do you think is a reasonable time frame?
The same day.
The same day, probably, right? I mean, you all will have a class probably after this one, maybe another one after that one. You can't go immediately sometimes, right? But nonetheless, within the day, I would say, is about where you want to be, okay? So it says go over my lecture notes and rework them. What does it mean to rework your lecture notes? How do you all take notes? Let's start with that.
On paper.
On paper? Okay, most of you use paper. Okay, so we're taking notes on paper. But what does it mean to take notes? What are you doing? What's the activity?
Writing down important stuff you say.
Writing down important stuff I say. Okay?
And stuff to remember.
Stuff to remember. All right. What are you telling your brain when you write something down? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Remember this is important.
Okay, you remember this is important. How do you think your brain receives that? Huh? It doesn't? There's a couple of things that I think are important about taking notes. Some people take way too many notes, and they're not learning much when they do that. You just need to make sure that you're outlining things that you might need to remember. Really what you need to be doing is taking notes on the things that I'm adding in addition to the materials that you already have. There is no reason for you to write down this stuff on this slide. I make these slides available to you. But I might say something to you that you find important to you that you might want to write down that's not in any of those materials. But you need to be careful about taking notes. Note taking is very, very important. But notes on a piece of paper is not learning. In fact, your brain sometimes interprets note taking as I really don't need to remember this. It's somewhere else. Okay? That's why it's important to go back and rework your notes. Okay? It's not that you have to commit everything that you ever learn in chemistry or English or any other discipline to memory. But you have to have enough stuff in memory to be functional in your field. I do not go back and look in textbooks to figure out what the molecular or the atomic mass is of carbon or hydrogen or oxygen. I use those all the time, right? And so reworking your notes allows you to use that information all the time and commit it to longer term memory. But if you simply take a note and never go back to it, you've told your mind it's not, really what you've said is it's not important. I've written it down, I don't need to remember it. Okay? Highlighting in your book is another thing that frequently convinces you that you don't need to commit it to memory. Oh, I know where things are in my highlight. Okay? So again, 54.2% of you all agreed that you do this. That's a significant portion of you that don't. And it's okay. You probably didn't do this in high school. Probably didn't have to. In high school, you had time. Maybe even at the community college, you had time during class time to do a lot of these things, which you won't have at the university. So, again, as soon as possible is probably going to be within the day. Many of you have breaks scheduled throughout the day just as a result of your schedule. So get in the habit of, in between classes, that's a good time to go back and rework your notes. Reworking your notes is going to be different for every one of you. It's going to be different from class to class. But usually for me, what it means, when I'm done with a meeting and I've taken notes, what I try to do is I try to summarize what those notes are telling me mentally. I go over my notes and I try to summarize them and make sense of the meeting. Okay? And so that's what you all need to be doing as well. Okay? And also note areas that maybe, wait, what did I write there? What is that? Right? That's a good opportunity for you to ask the professor questions or work with a study group. Prompt 3 was, I try to do my homework without using example problems as a guide or copying answers from my class notes or textbook. Why is this important?
To know you actually know it.
Okay, that's right. So to know that you actually know the material, right? This is where that Feynman technique kind of comes into play a little bit. What else?
You know if you need to ask questions.
Okay, know if you need to ask questions. You all could watch me solve some problem. And what you'll notice when you watch me solving a problem is you'll go, well, that looked easy, right? It looks easy because I've been doing it year after year after year after year when I teach organic chemistry. I know where to start. I know where, I know all the kinds of things. And you'll sit there and you'll go, well, that was easy. Then when you go home and you start trying to do your homework by yourself without me around or the notes, it won't be so easy, right? I have watched people perform operations, surgeries, well, not on people, but on like animals, vets, okay? I would not be comfortable saying I'm ready to go in. I saw them do everything, right? But I would need more practice before I was comfortable with that. So, trying to do your homework without using those examples, without those crutches, gives you an opportunity to practice how you really know things, to build that memory, that muscle memory, if you will, about that. One of the worst things that you can do is go to Chegg and get the answers, or go to the solutions manual if your book comes with one, before you've done that. So if you have access to that kind of material, I'm not downing Chegg, I'm not downing the solutions manual. What I'm saying is it's how you use that information. If you sit there and try to solve a problem over and over and over again and get the wrong answer, it's okay to refer to your notes. It's okay to refer to your textbook. It's okay to refer to your solutions manual. But don't start from that point because you're not going to learn anything, okay? You have to struggle a little bit to learn. Learning is a struggle, believe it or not. The good news is almost 92% of you said that you did this. That's encouraging, okay? That's very encouraging. You're embracing the challenge of learning something new, okay? So that's good. Prompt 4 was, I regularly go to office hours or tutoring to discuss problems or questions about the homework. How many of you know where the tutoring locations are on campus? A few of you. Okay. If you need help with chemistry problems, where is the Chemistry Tutorial Center? Second floor, Walker Science, not far from where your laboratories are, right? I can guarantee you, because I used to serve an hour every week in the tutorial center before I took my new job. The tutorial center is not as heavily used as it should be, except for 2 instances. The day before the exam and an hour before the exam. They are heavily used during those time periods. Those are the wrong times to be using the tutorial center. Okay? Now, people will drop in before their lab, putting their pre-lab together. Hey, I'm having a problem with this, that, or the other. But it's not a huge use at that time. We are committing as an institution significant resources for people to be there available to you so that you can drop in and use that that resource as you need to. Highly recommend you make use of it. What is a great way to use a tutorial session or a tutorial center?
Having questions ready.
Have your questions ready. That's exactly right. Okay? The thing that always frustrated me the most when I would be in the tutorial center, and I tutored when I was in grad school as well, so I mean, it goes back a long way. I would have a student come in, and they would say, we're studying chapter whatever, and I don't know a thing. Well, I'm supposed to be a tutor, not a teacher. So, you're really asking a lot of a tutor to completely help you understand an entire genre of work in a short period of time. It's almost impossible. That's not what tutoring is about. That's what lecture is about, right? That's why you have class, is to go and get a little understanding of something. So a couple of strategies is to, if you are working problems and you're struggling to figure out the answer, and even when you go to the solutions manual, you're struggling with how they got to that answer, that's a great thing to take to the tutorial center. Hey, Dr. So-and-so or graduate student so-and-so, this particular problem, I get started here and then I can't figure out how to go from A to B. That is how you can effectively use your tutoring time. Where else do we have tutoring opportunities on campus? The library, if you're an athlete, there's the athletics tutoring center. I think that's what it's called, the Bauer Center or whatever they call that now. It is available for you. The math has a tutoring center. I believe it's in the math zone. I can find out. My daughter is actually a student here. She's a math major, and I think she works as a tutor. So you could go see her if you have issues with calculus or algebra. What other types of tutoring facilities do we have? We have the speaking center and the writing center, right? So if you're struggling with your writing or public speaking, certainly we have those in the library. And I highly encourage you all to use those as you move throughout your curriculum. Anything else? I know we used to have some tutoring over in the over by the Century Park North. I guess they're still doing that. But there's also opportunities if you need more personalized tutoring, you can hire a tutor, right? Those get kind of expensive. Many years ago when I was a graduate student, I was charging $20 an hour then. I don't know what they charge now. But you can ask the secretary upstairs in the chemistry suite, the School of Math and Natural Science. Do you know any graduate students that might be willing to tutor? They usually keep a list, right? You can get some help there. But there's also tutoring available for history. There's a history lab. There's, I believe there's some stuff for English other than just the writing center. So always ask about tutoring. How many of you use your faculty members' office hours? That is a resource that you really should be taking advantage of, okay? Tutoring is great and it's helpful, but sometimes it just comes down to needing to have a talk with the professor, especially if you're struggling with how the professor presents material, okay? I present material in a way that I understand it, okay? But if you're having issues with how that's happening, then we need to have a talk, and I need to make adjustments to my lectures, right? So it's very important that you also use office hours. Probably not so much for Chemistry 108, but for your other classes. Why else is it important to use office hours other than just your learning? Making connections. Each and every one of you, at some point, are going to need a letter of recommendation for something. Maybe it's medical school applications, maybe it's a scholarship, whatever the case may be. Study abroad. You want to study abroad, you want to get a scholarship. To do that, you need a letter of recommendation. Faculty do not think of letters of recommendation as recommendations. They think of them as evaluations. If you are just a person on a spreadsheet with a grade by it, there's not a whole lot I can say. But if you come to my office hours and we get to know one another, and I learn that you're a good student, you got a good GPA, and by the way, you're a full-time student and you're working 20 hours a week, I can start talking about your work ethic, your commitment to your degree. I can start talking about those things that they want me to evaluate you on. Okay? I can learn about that. I've had students that have come to me and asked for a letter of recommendation, and I said, I'm honestly sorry, I just don't remember you. Why is that? Because you were in one of the classes I taught that almost had 200 people in it. Okay, I see you did well, but the transcript already tells your people that, and that's all I can add. I'm sorry, I can't offer you a letter of recommendation. I will say no if I can't write a letter of recommendation for you. So that's important. And in some cases, programs or whatever the case may be that you're seeking a letter for, sometimes they require you to have letters from different disciplines. Okay? They may not want all science faculty. They may not want all, humanities faculty. So keep that in mind. The good news is, almost 92% of you said that you did one of these. And I'm guessing from the hands that went up, most of you used the tutoring sessions. But I want to encourage you to also use your faculty members' office hours. I rework all of the homework problems and questions before the test or quiz. Why is this important? Okay, making sure that we understand the concept. Again, it's getting to that self-assessment, right? Okay. Before the test or quiz, what does that mean?
Being prepared in days.
Okay, being prepared, but what does before mean? 30 minutes before? Probably a few days before, right? You're not going to have time if, many of your classes may assign 30 homework problems, right? 20, 30 homework problems per chapter. You're not going to be able to rework all of those, right before. But these are excellent things that you can do during study sessions with your friends. Right? This is a great place to do that. And why is it, if you've already worked it and you got it right, why is it important to rework it?
Make sure you know what you're doing.
That's right. Pardon?
Like to make it it's like mind practice.
It is. It is exactly like practice. It's like lifting weights, right? You see musicians every day, if you're in the School of Music. And I know this pretty well because you all saw the video with Madison Hanson, who is a chemistry major and a music major. So she and I have had several conversations about her music. I mean, she has to devote 2 hours every day to practicing her instrument. And I'm like, that's a lot of practice. She's practiced that instrument since she was in, middle school. But she does it every day to make it like muscle memory, right? You've got to do the same thing with your academics. If you want to perform well, you have to practice, okay? That's a great thing to do with a group of fellow students, but unfortunately only 54.2% of you said that you regularly do this. Just because you got a problem right when you work the homework, you're not going to probably see that exact problem again on the test. But you will see a similar problem And you want to be able to be confident in your ability to solve like or similar problems. Okay? This is a great thing to do, again, with study groups. But again, I think I've told you this before, be careful how you structure your study groups. You do not want to have a study group that becomes a gripe session. That happens a lot. People will get together, especially if they're in the same boat. So if you're in a study group of 4 or 5 people and you're all struggling in the class, really quickly that's going to divulge into just a gripe session about the class or the instructor because you all really don't know where to start. You need to have a diverse study group. And every one of you will be taking strengths to that study group. Even in a class that you're struggling in, there are pieces of that course that you probably know or get better than anybody else. And so that goes in with the growth mindset. You may be coming in with a piece, they may be coming in with a piece, and together you can grow. Okay? So only 54.2% of you agreed that you did this. Your freshman year in college is a bit of a lie in a way, because you'll be thinking, well, I'm in this English class. I had English 4 years in high school. This is easy, and it probably is to many of you, right? But that's not how your sophomore year is going to be, or your junior year, or your senior year. Okay. So don't get into that habit of thinking that the freshman year is going to be how every year is going to be for you. However, if you have a good, successful freshman year, and you take these strategies into account, your sophomore year will be easier, and you will learn more, which will make your junior year easier, and you will learn more. Okay? Prompt 6 was, I spend some time studying for this class at least 5 days per week outside of class. You all probably have classes that are Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can't think about that material just on Monday and Wednesday, or Tuesday and Thursday. You have to think about this material quite frequently, actually. Again, you've primed your brain, you've gone to class, you've taken notes, you've gone over them, but you still need to spend some time studying and thinking about that class material. It doesn't matter whether it's a chemistry class or a humanities class, whatever the case may be, you still need to be thinking about this material, okay? At least 5 days a week. You got to have a little bit of time for yourself. You got to do laundry and all that kind of stuff, right? You got to live. I get it. You got to have some downtime. But you need to build this into your schedule. If you schedule your study time, you're more likely to do it. You've committed it to something. You've got a device that prompts you to do it. Okay? What could studying be at least 5 days per week? What activities might constitute studying? Homework problems. You all know I don't like the word study. We already talked about that last week, right? But she used it, so we're going to use it. Homework problems. What else? Reading the material. There is nothing worse, and I love chemistry, okay? But there is nothing worse than reading a chapter of a chemistry book from start to finish in one sitting. Nothing worse. It'll put me to sleep every time. It's just because it's technical stuff. It's not like you're reading your whatever is the most popular book these days, right? It's not like reading that kind of stuff. So you need to do it in chunks. Figure out your chunks over 5 days. I know this week in general chemistry we're going to cover chapter 4. Break chapter 4 up into 5 chunks that will get you where you need to be before you go to class and everything else that you need, and you'll be in a lot better shape, I promise you. After about 15 minutes, you all start losing attention. Classes really should be no more than 20 minutes long. Okay? And I can see it in here even, right? It's just human nature. After about, we've been in here about 39 minutes, right? People start doing a few other things, start paying attention to other things. We have more distractions today than ever, right? So you want to do this in chunks. We tend to remember things at the beginning of a study session and right at the end and miss a lot in the middle. So what do? If it's the beginning and the end of things, you create a lot of beginning and ends, which means you chop it up. Okay? So that's a good thing to do. About 71% of you said you did this. Okay? Not bad. But there is room for improvement there, right? Prompt 7. I make mnemonics for myself to help me remember facts and equations. What does that mean?
Like, how PEMDAS, like, please excuse my dear and salary at the mnemonic.
Okay, yeah. Cute little sillies, I call them, that help us remember things, right? When you all get to where you're talking about oxidation and reduction in chemistry, the one that I always remember is oil rig. I grew up in Oklahoma. It's an oil state. It stuck with me. Oxidation is loss, oil. Rig, reduction is gain. So I know that oxidation is loss of electrons, reduction is gain of electrons. And as corny as that sounds, I still use that mnemonic for myself. Okay, is that an oxidation? Is it losing? And I might go back through that and remember that. Okay? There are some mnemonics that you will learn even in class. Your professor might tell you some. Right? I learned the equation PV equal nRT from my high school chemistry teacher. He always went around and called that PUV nerd. It just kind of stuck. He was kind of a corny guy, and it stuck with me. And so when every time I write that equation down, in my mind, I'm going PUV nerd. PV equal nRT. 58% of you said that you do this. Again, it's one of those things that you can connect things together. I forget the song, but I had a friend when we were in college who memorized all the amino acids in biochemistry. Every one of them, by putting it to a song. And in her mind, she would sing that song when she had to list them out. And it worked for her. Prompt 8 was I make diagrams or draw mental pictures of concepts discussed in class. Why is this important?
Different ways to think about it.
Different ways to think about it? Yep. I'm a very graphical person. I can see a table of data and it means absolutely nothing to me. Right? So in my current job, I get these huge spreadsheets of information from university institutional research. And it's just numbers on a sheet. I have to convert that into something that's meaningful. And one of the nice things about the sciences is we like graphs, right? And so I use graphs all the time. How has that program's enrollment been over the last 10 years? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? I can see that immediately on a graph. If I'm looking at all the data on a spreadsheet, I'm like, So you need to make mental pictures and drawings of concepts that you're discussing in class. This is even important in your humanities classes. When you're talking about history, think about how you might diagram out how events occurred, right? That is usually helpful as opposed to just memorizing that X happened, then Y, and then Z. But how can you diagram that out to show the interconnection of X, Y, and Z, right? We're always looking for relationships in the sciences. That's what we study. Numbers by themselves are meaningless, right? If I told you I was going to give you 100, would that excite you? It shouldn't, because I could be giving you 100 sheets of toilet paper. Well, these days that might be important. I could be giving you 100 pennies. I could be giving you $100. I could be giving you 100 sausages, right? You have to put numbers in context, and that's what making diagrams and mental pictures of concepts helps us do. Good news is, over 80% of you all said that you did this, okay? Or used some kind of strategy similar to this. Prompt 9, I participate in a study group where we do homework and quizzes and quiz ourselves on the material. What's important about this?
Teaching others will help you learn.
That's right. We learned last week that we can learn the best by teaching. Very good. What else? That's exactly right. What else?
Reworking, you are reworking the questions.
Uh-huh. There's an important point that I think a lot of people miss when they look at this. We are social animals, right? We really are, and COVID has really knocked many people for a loop in this regard. Even people who are introverted are still need some level of socialization, okay? And when you get together, you're not only talking about the material, but you're making important social interactions and social connections. They can be important down the line. That person who's in your study group may end up being the CEO of some company at some point in the future, or a politician, or whatever. You never know, right? You will cross paths again at some point, probably, with many people, okay? And sometimes it is who you know. That's just the way the world works. And so making these social connections are very, very important. So I think it's very important, but only 58% of you thought that this was. What are some of the things that prevent this from happening? Time. It is a time commitment, right? Got to have a block that everybody can meet at, and everybody has their own schedules. It can be difficult. What else? Pardon? Parties? Okay. What else?
Finding people.
Pardon?
Finding people.
Finding people. That's right. And that's probably gotten a heck of a lot harder during COVID because you probably don't hang out as much as you used to, right? But one of the things that you need to know is that everybody in this classroom is in the same boat you are, right? You're in chemistry, or biochemistry, you're taking classes. Get to know one another, right? Unfortunately, we can't go around and shake hands. I can't do that activity right now because of COVID. But I used to have people in this class go around and introduce themselves to each other. But COVID thing's probably not a good idea right now, okay? But try to get to know students, at least the ones that. The lab is a great place. When you go to your Gen Chem lab or your organic lab, you're going to have a partner. You're going to have somebody across from you on the bench. Get to know those individuals. That's a great place to start. Okay, we can, legally socialize in the lab a lot better. In the lab we got all this air turnover and all this. It's probably not as big a COVID concern. Question 10, I rework all of the quiz and test items I have missed before the next class session. Why is this important from a growth mindset perspective? You may see those items again. That's true. What else?
You can ask questions in the next session.
Okay, gives you something to ask questions about.
The material usually builds on itself, so you need a strong foundation.
Absolutely true. You're all saying true things. But in that short little video we watched on growth mindset, right, it said failure was an opportunity to learn and to grow. Every test question that you miss, right, is an opportunity for you to learn. I didn't learn it well enough to apply it. I now know that I need to work on that. Let's work on that, right? That's very, very important. Before the next class session, why is that important?
If you do it after the next class session, then you'll learn more stuff on top of that you're going to have to go over again.
That's right.
And you might not understand the concept.
That's all true, but also the longer you wait, the less you're going to remember about how you were working that problem, right? So doing that fairly quickly. So you turn in your exam, 2 days later you get the exam back with the grades, you need to look at what you missed, right? Try to work that. Again, only 58% of you mark this one as something that you regularly do. Okay? And then the last one. I realize that I can still do well in this class even if I've done poorly on the quizzes and tests up to this point. That's a growth mindset thing. Okay? Now, in many classes, not all, but in many classes, there comes a point where it's mathematically impossible to get to where you want to go. And you may have to make a decision about, do I withdraw from this class and take it again, or what? When you get to that point, you need to go have a conversation with your professor before you make a decision. Okay? Because you may not understand everything quite right in the grading scheme. You may have more opportunities than you think. You've already paid for the class. You know, you want to get as much out of it as you can. When I taught organic chemistry, I did my class to where this was never true, or it was never true that you were mathematically impossible, if that makes sense. So we had a final exam, and I always told students, you could get the grade that was all of your assignments added up, whatever that average was. But if you did better on the final than your average across the board, I gave you the better of the two grades. But I had one caveat. You had to complete all the work. So if you did all the homework, took all the tests, did everything, and you did better on the final than you did on the regular exams and homework, you got the better of the two grades. It was never mathematically impossible for you to do better until the final exam was over. Okay? I wish more professors would do that. I mean, it just makes sense. It gives you learning opportunities. Good news is 79% of you felt that this was true, okay, for you. All right, let's finish up with the predicted grade. And this comes from Dr. McGuire. Many years in her work at LSU, she did the analysis on this over many years. But in any particular course, if a student had 9 or more true responses for that inventory, they were in a highly likely category of getting an A in the class. If you had 6 to 8 of those being true, chances are you were going to get a B, and so on. If you really and truly make the things that you marked false true, you are improving your chances of getting a better grade in your class. And that's what the Learning Strategies Inventory assignment is going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post that Word document again with all those questions. And you are going to, if it was true for you, you will mark it true, and you will tell me underneath that question why it is true. If you marked it as false, you will put underneath that question how you could make it true. Okay, so you're going to build your own inventory. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to convert all 11 things, either they are true for me, or how could I make them true for me. Okay, and that's going to be your Learning Strategies Inventory assignment, which will be due sometime next week. So I'll get that posted today at some point. Okay? Are there any questions about that? Okay. And then finally, you all saw the interview with Madison Hanson. She's a current Golden Eagle. She'll be graduating this fall. She was a biochemistry music double major. One of the things that I wanted you to take from this was how she got her summer internship. Definitely you need to watch this. The reflections that will be due tomorrow will be over this video. So I'll ask some prompts about in the reflection. You all need to make sure you watch this video, okay? And we'll post some more of those as the semester goes on. So I hope you all enjoy them. And I hope that in the future, some of you are the ones that I'm videoing, okay? So keep that in mind as well. Have a great day. Try to stay dry. And I will see you all next week.